the link is showing my name here. So please, you can go to the list of participants and change your name back, because you joined with the Zoom link that had my code in it. So my name is what is showing. So you can just change it to your name so that we can be able to identify you. Okay, so it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this important workshop. I call it workshop because it's going to be very enriching, and we are going to hear from specialists in the field of gender-based violence and also climate change. And we are going to be taking a lot home, including recommendations on the way forward. As we all know, the issue of climate change and also gender-based violence are very key and important issues that are not just happening in Nigeria, but they are all global issues. And they are they are issues that, affect our lives as individuals, as nations, and globally also. So these are two important topics that are attracting global attention. And also, every country around the world is developing ways addressing the issues of gender-based violence and also addressing the issue of climate change. So these are two very important key issues that are affecting the world, and we decided to bring it to this platform for us to all put our heads together and see how we can contribute to addressing these issues. So once again, I want to especially welcome everyone. I know this period is a very busy period. A lot of us that are involved in climate change are already in COP. So many people are already in COP right now, COP 28, discussing climate change and campaigning for actions to address climate change. At the same time, people are also in the field and in conferences addressing the issues of gender-based violence under the auspices of the 16 Days of Activism against gender-based violence. So again, it's my pleasure to welcome everybody. And I know that for you to be here today is because these two issues are of importance to you. That is why you can devote this time to be here. So I congratulate everyone who have joined us now to discuss these issues. So we are going to be having, okay, let me start by introducing myself first. My name is Glory Brendan Otojo, and I am the Executive Director of Development Impact Pathfinders Initiative. We are the initiators of this conference or workshop, and we are working in partnership with the Center for 21st Century Issues. These two organizations have been very much involved with the issues of climate change and gender-based violence. We have been also involved we've been very much involved in integrating gender and gender equality into climate change advocacy, into climate change programs, ensuring that women and girls are not left behind in these two issues, and that their perspectives are also brought to light. Because we have discovered that climate change, for instance, everybody, yes, but there is a kind of more burden on women and girls, because more women and girls depends more on natural resources that are vulnerable to climate change. Aside the dependence, women and girls are also more vulnerable because the capacity to deal with these issues. Also, women and girls are also, lack that capacity to deal with issues. For instance, if you have been following the climate change activities, you hear about climate financing. So women have that challenge of access to finance when it comes to climate change adaptation, because as we already know, climate change is happening, and apart from mitigation, which is trying to limit the release of greenhouse gases that causes climate change and mitigate their effect, there is also the adaptation, which is being able to cope and adjust to the impacts that the climate change is already creating. And women are more vulnerable because we lack the capacity, the finances, also cultural barriers that limit women, access to land, access to facilities, and other issues that we'll see as we go into this discussion today. I do not want to be the only one to speak about this. So first of all, I'm going to give the platform to our partner, Center for 21st Century Issues, to say their welcome address and to usher us all also into the issues we are going to be discussing today. Once again, I welcome you all and thank you for sparing this time to join us today. Over to you, Amina.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amina Davis. I'm a program officer of Center for 21st Century Issues. I welcome everybody to this nice initiative. It's a wonderful one where we'll be able to learn about gender-based violence and how it disturbs and how it intersects with climate change and everything. So I would like everybody to enjoy the speakers, the wonderful speakers from different sectors that are here to talk about deepening awareness and conversion of about the intersection of climate change and gender violence. So welcome everybody and enjoy. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Amina, for that welcome address. I would like to also take this few times to also introduce ourselves. If you're online, you can unmute and introduce yourself, or you can use to introduce yourself.
Hello.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I am Abase Kemendo Nobo from Akwa Ibom, the gender lead for Blue Green Initiative for Sustainable Development, and I'm glad to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Inyoban. We are glad you are here. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, like I said, you can either use the comment section or you can unmute and introduce yourself. We just do that in the next 5 minutes, and then we go on with the activities for today. We do not want to waste so much time because I know everybody is very busy at this time, and a lot of people are already in conferences also while we speak.
Okay, good morning, or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. My name is Morenike Omaiboje. I'm Director of Programs with Women's Consortium of Nigeria. We are based in Nigeria. I'm a gender advocate. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Madam Morenike, we are glad that you can join us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, as the case may be. I am Jumoke Odediji, the Program Manager for Center for 21st Century Issues. It's good to be here.
Glad to meet you and welcome. Okay, so I think we should move on to the next agenda on our list. So today we are going to be, we are going to have our experts and speakers discuss and make their presentations on different aspects of this workshop today. So we are going to be having an overview of climate change and impacts in Nigeria. We are going to be listening to our expert talk about connecting the dots. How does climate change increase the risk of violence? We are also going to have our specialists to discuss about where we are in terms of climate change and gender. What are the efforts? What are the global and national efforts that are in place to address climate change impact, and how these efforts integrate issues of GBV and harmful practices against women and girls? She's also going to be telling us about the National Action Plan on Gender and Climate Change, which has already been developed, and how that action plan can support GBV prevention efforts in Nigeria. We are also going to be looking at how climate justice activism. We already know that in COP28 that is going on in Dubai right now, there are many activities, climate justice activities, demanding action against climate change. And we have also people who are demanding gender just climate justice. So it's not enough to demand for climate action, but also streamline it to gender climate justice. So we need solutions that are gender sensitive. We need solutions that will not lead to more violence against women and girls. We do not want. We also want participation of women and girls in the governance, in the processes that leads up to the climate change activities, both globally and in Nigeria. So we'll have our specialists also discussing how we can leverage that particular platform to also drive the end to gender-based violence issues. And lastly, we'll be having a kind of interactive section where everybody would suggest how do we move from where we are right now to where we ought to be. And the reason for calling this meeting is so that we can amplify the voices to end gender-based violence, using the platform of the climate action justice that is already going on, and also forging a front. And please, can you mute your mic? Please, if your mic is on, please kindly mute so that we can hear from this end. Yes, thank you very much once again. So to move us further into this conversation, I would like to invite our first speaker, who is going to be talking to us about climate change and climate change impacts on livelihoods in Nigeria. A lot of people feel that climate change is just one of those global issues that people, take advantage of to travel, go for conferences, make noise and all that. but we are going to be hearing how climate change is actually, in fact, affecting our lives. You'll find out that so many of the things that we think are happening and they are just normal could just be because of climate change. You know, a lot of people do not, relate a lot of things that are happening to climate change, or in fact, a lot of people may not even have heard about climate change, and how it's affecting their livelihood, even though they are experiencing these livelihood issues, but they don't link it up to climate change. So we have an expert in the house today that will be talking to us about climate change and its impacts on Nigeria. I believe he has the capacity to do justice to this topic. So I'd like us to welcome Dr. Ehosa Ekato. He is a senior lecturer in law at the University of Derby, United Kingdom. His main research areas include international environmental law, African international legal history, natural resources governance, and all other issues that relates to the environment. Dr. Ekato has published extensively on his research areas, and his academic papers have been cited by a plethora of public and international agencies, including the United Kingdom, Parliament's International Trade Committee, and the United Nations Refugee Council. Dr. Kato is also the chair committee on the teaching of international law and the SDGs, International Law Association Nigerian branch, and senior fellow, environmental law and sustainable development, Institute for Oil, Gas, Energy, Environment and Sustainable Development, Afe Babalola University. Dr. Kato is the current Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Sustainable Development Law and Policy, Afe Babalola University, Nigeria. So you can see the profile of our speaker. He has done great research and contributed so much into climate change and environment in Nigeria and globally. So please, let's welcome Dr. Ehosa Ekato to make his presentation. Over to you, Dr. Ekato.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your invitation. Can I share my slides?
Yes.
I don't know, because your screen, I'm still seeing the screen, so I was wondering.
Okay, Amina, please make him a host so that he can be able to share his screen.
All right.
Yes, sir, you can share now.
Okay, thank you. 1 sec. Can you see my screen? Can you see my slides rather? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can you see my
No,
slides?
not for now. Not for now.
It showed
Sorry?
and disappeared.
No, it's not showing again.
Yeah, it showed for some time and disappeared.
Because I'm trying to share. I'm actually sharing. Okay, let me try again. Is it sharing now?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Egosa Ikato. I'm a senior lecturer in law, University of Derby. So thank you, moderator, for your kind introduction. So, what am I discussing today? I'm just going to give an overview of climate change and impacts in Nigeria in terms of what is the legal framework, what is the impact on human rights, and what activities like your organization can do to ensure that one of the most vulnerable social groups in Nigeria, women, can be protected against the negative impacts of climate change in the country. So, my background, I've done a lot of stuff around environmental justice, which is my main area. I've done a lot of stuff around women's rights, especially as well. So I understand issues around gender-based violence, issues around climate change. So, but my focus for today is just essentially on a very few, because of the limited time, a very few topics. So my outline for today talks about the impact of climate change, the impact of climate change on women in Nigeria, the legal framework in terms of the Climate Change Act of 2021 in Nigeria, then what's the relationship between climate change and human rights. So the question is, for example, the negative impacts of climate change on the environment, for example, on people, can we equate that to be human rights violations as well? So then, so what, can somebody mute the mic at the background, please, if you don't mind? Um, so
Please,
in
if your
terms of
mic is on, sorry, please. If your mic is on, please kindly mute yourself.
So thank you very much. So in terms of the strategies, so what are the strategies that activists, ordinary people, lawyers can actually do to ensure that climate justice is promoted, to ensure that we reduce as much as possible the negative impacts of climate change on women in Nigeria? So I've just listed a few of these sort of strategies I think that will be very useful in terms of litigation, in terms of environmental litigation, climate change litigation, in terms of cross-border or foreign litigation, and activism of NGOs. So, for example, the organization is an example of an NGO trying to maybe bring issues of climate change to the fore in terms of its impact on women. Then, in terms of climate change awareness and education, how does that actually what Nigerian students, university students, undergraduate, secondary school students, are they aware of climate change? Are they aware of climate awareness? Are they aware of climate laws? And also, because I'm a lawyer, as lawyers as well. So in today's world, for example, no lawyer should be oblivious of climate change rules, climate change laws, because any lawyer is going to be practicing in the next 2, 3 years. Any lawyer now is going to be impacted by climate change. Climate change is the biggest challenge that we face as a society in every part of the world. So the last sort of strategy which I've got is the abrogation of discriminatory laws against women in Nigeria. So if you conversant about Nigerian laws, about Nigerian customary laws, religious laws, etc. Many parts of Nigeria, there's a lot of states, what are called state-sanctioned discriminatory practices against women. It could be various laws of the paramilitary organizations, could be culture, it could be religion, and it could also be the patriarchal nature of Nigerian society, and as a way, try to relegate women to the backbone and to the background. So, if you are going to ensure that climate change does not negatively impact on women, the legal framework of the protection and promotion of women's rights needs to be expanded, and we need to protect the rights of women very much in Nigeria. So, then, in terms of the impacts, we are aware of the impacts of climate change. So, I live in the UK. We do. I've been here for a while, and the weather has actually changed. In the last few years, we have rain. We've got flooding. A few months ago, there was a massive flood in New York, in America. And if you watch the news, there's always one issue related to weather changes and negative impacts of climate change in different parts of the world. So, climate change has actually had different negative impacts in every single country in the world. So it's a major issue. Currently, as well, we have this COP28 actually taking place, where the international community is trying to come together to try and see if we can resolve these issues around climate change. So, in the context of the impact of the destructive impact of climate change, so a lot of scholars have said you have the short-term impacts, which includes like drought, flooding, landslides, and tidal waves, and the long-term impact of climate change, which includes a continuing destruction of the environment, the continuing destruction of the planet. So then also, if you're conversant with the IPCC and its various reports, the International Panel on Climate Change, in their report in 2020, has actually stressed that the various threats that climate change poses to the survival of the planet. And Africa is a very, very, very sort of Africa is the most vulnerable, one of the most vulnerable continents in terms of the negative impact of climate change. And if you come to Nigeria as well, think about what's happening: desertification, climate migration, the impact of climate on violence in northern part of Nigeria, etc. So climate change is not something which you see on TV. Whether we like it or not, we are being impacted negatively by climate change every day. So the IPCC report basically provides that evidence that shows that there has been a big rise in global warming, and greenhouse gas emissions is definitely having destructive, harmful impact on the planet and billions of people all over the world. So there's no single part of the world which is left out of climate change impact. This includes the issues around drought, heavy rainfall, cyclones are occurring in different parts of the world. So the only difference is that in the developed world, they have the resources, they have the money to basically mitigate and adapt to the negative impact of climate change. But in developing countries, in poorer parts of the world, we already have environmental injustices issues, and you already have people, social groups that are already vulnerable to negative impact of climate change. And in many parts of the world, women, children, and people living with disability are unable to actually mitigate or adapt to negative impact of climate change. So Nigeria is an example of a country suffering negative impact of climate change. And Nigeria is said to be one of the 10 countries that are suffering the most of climate change. So because of this negative impact of climate change, Nigerian government has a plethora of policies, plans, and mechanisms that have been developed to try and tackle the scourge of climate change in the country. So impact of climate change on women. I'm not going to focus on gender-based violence, which I know someone else is going to discuss. I'm just going to talk about the impact generally. So if you look at access to justice, we go to Niger Delta, for example. Access to environmental justice, access to justice is a very, very, very difficult issue in terms of people don't have the money, the resources to tackle the negative impacts on the environment on their lives, so they are unable to take the government to court, they are unable to take the multinational corporation to court. So in this context, environmental justice issues tends to be a challenge for many vulnerable people in Nigeria, and women tend to particularly encounter those serious barriers. So if you go to the Niger Delta, for example, women are the ones who suffer the most, for example, in terms of they tend to suffer uniquely from environmental injustices. So the gender roles, for example, because women they tend to do the traditional functions in many parts of Niger Delta, go take firewood from the farm, etc. So they tend to bear and they live close to the or exploration sites where women tend to bear most of the negative impact of environmental justice. And many parts of Nigeria, where women and some women don't have jobs, they're unable to basically it's difficult to own land, etc. And even there are environmental justice cases, case law from Niger Delta. Most of the plaintiffs in many of these cases are either the community head who's a man or the youth, etc. So women are in a way they are basically excluded from getting the benefits of the oil and gas industry. So these gender externalities in Nigeria worsen the vulnerability of women to climate injustices and negative impact of climate change. So there's been a relatively recent study in 2017 which actually says that children and babies in Nigeria are twice as likely to die in the first month of life if their mothers were living near to the spill before fully pregnant. So basically, most of people living close to the gas flaring site, most of women living close to the oil spill, they tend to have difficult birth, tend to have a lot of issues with their babies, and tend to lose their babies as well. So in that context, women tend to bear the worst of climate change in Nigeria. So multinational corporations as well, their activities are also impacted negatively on the socio-economic fiscal means of subsistence of women in Nigeria in terms of the destruction of strained oil spills. So some women are not able to farm, they're not able to go to the market. So these have a lot of socio-economic and negative impact on the ability of women to fend for themselves in Niger Delta. So although access to environmental justice, because environmental justice and climate justice are very related, climate justice as a concept came from environmental justice. So environmental justice is a major issue. Environmental injustices, climate injustices are major issues in Nigeria, which we know, but it is worse for women who are one of the most vulnerable social groups in Nigeria, and the women tend to encounter serious challenges in accessing environmental justice. So I just quickly run through the legal framework on climate change in Nigeria. So prior to 2021, there was no standalone explicit law that talks about climate change. Before this time, we had a plethora of various plans, national plans, etc. But there was no law, there was no legislation. So in 2021, Nigeria, former President Buhari signed the first standalone climate change legislation. So what are some of the significant innovations in this law? It talks about provides a framework to achieve low gas emissions. It tries to embed climate action into national programs. It talks about the possibility of developing a climate change fund, which may also include carbon taxes. And the law is set to be applicable to both private and public companies and government bodies and agencies as well. But there are a lot of criticism about this law as well, that it doesn't actually promote climate litigation explicitly, that this law, the government appears not to be very, very keen about this law. And yes, it's good. Well, if you look at the history of laws in Nigeria, having laws is not the problem. It's about implementation, it's about enforcement. So the prayer is that the Nigerian government should actually implement this law. And the question is, how many people actually are aware of this Climate Change Act? How many cases have been to court to use climate change law as a way of promoting the rights of women? I'm not aware of any case, but potentially this is a framework that can be used to ensure that women should not bear the negative impact of climate change in Nigeria. So now, climate change and human rights. How does climate change impact on the rights of women? So one of the sort of this conceptualization of climate justice is that the impact of climate change on human rights. So the idea is that climate change does have negative impact on the enjoyment of human rights. For example, issues around weather disasters are worse in developing countries. For example, Nigeria, events such as storm floods affect housing, endanger food sources, access to clean water, and deny people of their livelihood. So these disasters arising from climate change does have negative implications of human beings enjoying their human rights, because the negative impacts of climate change could lead to flooding. For example, that means if you're a fisherwoman or a fisherman, you fish in a farm or in a stream, and that stream becomes overflooded, or you are unable to access your property, access your farm, automatically your right to food, your right to housing, your right to dignity may also be negatively impacted. So climate change do have a negative impact on how human beings can enjoy their civil and political rights and socioeconomic rights. So if you contextualize that, climate change in Nigeria basically affects different generations of rights, including civil and political rights, which means right to life, right to dignity, socioeconomic rights, such as right to environment, right to housing, right to food, amongst others, are negatively impacted by the negative consequences arising from climate change. So, and also if you contextualize the role of women in this issue, you realize that these negative impacts of climate change and human rights tend to affect women more in the Nigerian context. We're looking from a Niger Delta perspective. So now, what are the strategies? What do we need to do? Yes, it's not all doom and gloom. So from my research and from what I've done so far on the ground, etc., litigation is one strategy. Activism of NGOs, such as what the organization is doing. Then climate change awareness and education is also another one. Then, as I said earlier, we need to abrogate and do some of these discriminatory practices, laws against women in Nigeria. So climate litigation is quite popular now, that you can actually take MNCs, multinational corporations to court, or take governments to court in a way to ensure that governments are living up to their climate change obligations. But climate litigation is also popular because the international system is a bit weak. So in different parts of the world, in the global south, in the global north, they are using litigation as a tool to ensure that governments are being held accountable for their climate change obligations. So climate change litigation is emerging globally and has become a very key aspect of what we call the transnational litigation. So according to scholars, there is no explicit climate change case in Nigeria. Climate change litigation is still in its infancy. So, however, personally, I'm one of those scholars that have said that is not totally correct, that you can actually conceptualize some of the existing Nigerian cases and from a climate litigation lens. For example, the Deepened case is said to be the first climate litigation case in the world. And if you're a lawyer who understands the legal standing in Nigerian context, Center for Air Pollution Watch case and NNPC was a 2019 case, has actually liberalized local standard for NGOs in environmental matters in Nigeria. So prior to this decision in 2021, NGOs in Nigeria did not have the right to represent communities on their own. So in terms of legal standing, must have a substantial connection to the issue, must have been personally affected by the OSP. But in the context of that case, the Supreme Court said that every Nigerian, every stakeholder, every Nigerian is stakeholder, NGOs are stakeholder in environmental protection, that NGOs can actually institute cases on behalf of communities that suffer from environmental disasters. So potentially that is one tool. That case, the Center for Air Pollution case, can be one tool that women can actually use to promote climate action in Nigeria. So Dr. Komagbaso says that climate litigation can be an effective method for victims. You can replace victims here. Women can be an effective method for women who have gotten the negative impact of climate change in Nigeria to seek redress against government, to seek redress against oil corporations responsible for large greenhouse gases emissions without commemorate, mitigative, and adaptive measures. So basically, climate litigation can be a tool that women can use to enhance access to climate justice. So activism of NGOs is another one. Your NGO, ERA, for example, Environmental Rights Action, has been at the forefront of promoting climate justice action. Many of the environmental cases filed in Nigeria against Shell, against multinational corporation, against Nigerian government have been filed by civil society groups, or the victims have been assisted by civil society groups to file those cases. So this is just a snapshot of some of the cases. You have the Bembre and SPDC case, which was instituted in the Federal High Court of Nigeria in 2005. You have the Buto and the Chevron case. You have the Wiwa and Share case, we litigated in the USA. Akpa and Share was heard in the Netherlands, while Bodo and SPDC was heard in the United Kingdom. Many of these cases have been, many of the litigants from Nigeria in this case have been supported by NGOs, both local and international NGOs. Also, there has been recent cases filed by Nigerian women in different parts of the world, especially in the Netherlands. So litigation, NGOs can use activism to promote the rights of women in terms of climate change. So climate change awareness is a very major issue. So when you read about research on environmental education, it's always about sustainable development. Let's embed sustainable development. Let's embed environmental education into the legal curriculum. But the idea is that we need to also embed explicit integration of climate change issues should be embedded in law curriculum in Nigeria. Nigerian lawyers should be trained in law school about the legal framework of climate change, the adaptation, etc. So according to Justice Preston, an Australian lawyer, says climate change places a responsibility on lawyers to adopt a climate conscious rather than a climate blind approach in their daily legal practice. A climate conscious approach requires an active awareness of the reality of climate change and how it interacts with daily legal problems. So my suggestion is that due to the severe nature of climate change threats in Nigeria, legal education curriculum should be revamped, and the training of lawyers should be totally revamped as well to contain explicit allusion to the utility of international and national legal frameworks, practices, principles, and awareness of climate change issues in Nigeria. So lawyers should not just be trained all about maybe Nigerian law of thought, land law, etc. Nigerian lawyers should also have some form of legal training in terms of climate change, legal framework, so that in their practice, this is what they are going to be facing more often. As the world is changing, a lot of lawyers need to adapt to what climate change is doing to the society, to Nigeria and different parts of the world. So finally, my last strategy is that in Nigeria, for example, we have a lot of customary practices, a lot of laws that actually discriminate against women in Nigeria. For example, in terms of ownership of land, in terms of property rights in divorce, in terms of some custom that basically exclude widows from inheriting the property of their late husband. So many of these laws and practices do infringe on human rights of women and other vulnerable members of society in Nigeria, thereby restricting access to justice for the vulnerable and marginalized group in Nigeria, including women in Nigeria. So, however, there have been recent development in the context of new laws that have been developed. You have the VAP Act, the Nigerian VAP Act. You have various state laws on prohibiting gender-based violence, etc. And you also have recent judicial decisions saying that some specific customs that infringe on the rights of women could be unconstitutional, and those customs are said to be null and void because they're against the laws, etc. So, for example, Nigerian Supreme Court has also become very active in recent times, and some recent decisions have been used to nullify some of these discriminatory practices against women. But in terms of this law, in terms of this case law relating to women and customs and discrimination, many of these cases are limited to where that particular custom operates. So my viewpoint is that the federal government and state, both in northern part of Nigeria and southern part of Nigeria, need to enact more laws. Yes, there are laws on protection of women. Those laws need to be enforced. Those laws need to be enforced and implemented so that we can reduce discrimination against women in Nigeria, and if possible, stop. Because if we don't abrogate those laws, and we're talking about gender-based violence and climate change. In my view, gender-based violence and climate change basically is a symptom of what is deeper in Nigerian society, in terms of the patriarchal nature of our society, in terms of how some specific Nigerian laws actually promotes discrimination against women. So until we abrogate those laws, we can't win the fight against climate change and gender-based violence in Nigeria against women. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. Thanks.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Ehosa. Thank you for all the points you have brought to us. say that this is really, really enlightening. You have not just, enhanced our knowledge about the climate change impact. You have also led us through to actions, both legislative actions and also individual actions that we can take to mitigate climate change or to adapt to climate change, and also to promote access to the rights of women to resources to be able to adapt to climate change. You made us to understand that gender roles, also affects, or makes more women more vulnerable to climate change. Because, for instance, if there is a scarcity of water, which is, water resources is one area that is being impacted greatly by climate change. If you go to the north, rivers are drying up. Lake Chad, which used to be a major source of both water and livelihood to women in the north, are already dried up. So by the time there are no water, for no access to water, women, the burden, of women to go fetch water, take long distances to go and get water, becomes a problem. And that could also lead to domestic violence, because if a woman is not able to provide or do her domestic chores because access to resources are no longer there, that could trigger a lot of gender-based violence. So gender roles is one of the take-home from your presentation. Gender roles is making women more vulnerable. Those roles that we assign to women, I said it is women that have to do this. And a majority of these roles are dependent on natural resources that women depend on. For instance, even energy, providing our energy resources, that women need, especially in rural communities, going to fetch firewood, access to gas, for cooking and all that. These are all roles that we have assigned to women. And when these resources are scarce and they are not available, made access to women, that becomes a burden to them, and it increases their workload. You have also talked about, some of the rights of women that are being affected by climate change or environmental issues especially in the Niger Delta, where environmental degradation, where pollution are also driving increase in vulnerability, for women. And you have also mentioned that, we as CSOs, can leverage some of the laws that are already in place, to drive climate action and also drive the end to gender-based violence issues. Thank you very much for this presentation. We are happy to have you and to share your insight and your experiences with us. I know that there'll be a lot of questions for you, but we'll ask that you hold on while we introduce the second speaker and give access to her to share her experiences, so that we can combine the questions, because there will be related questions, to the issues you have raised and the ones she's going to raise right now. So I'm going to be...
so just 1 second. Unfortunately, I've got a meeting in 8 minutes, so I had to squeeze out time for this. So if I'm able to finish my meeting on time, I can come back in, but I've got classes as well, so that's why. So if you can, if you want to ask me questions now, that's fine. I've got 8 minutes literally to have another meeting now as well.
Okay, so let's take questions for Dr. Ehosa before he runs. We can't vouch for him coming back. So if you have any question, please unmute and ask your question. But from my own end, Dr. Ehosa, you talked about, how climate change came about, contributions and all that, who actually is responsible for climate change. We've seen, if you're following the ongoing discussions at COP28, we have seen that the president of COP in Dubai actually is is an oil magnet. Is from the I think it's Head and Shell or something. You know, an oil company that's and we know that majority of the cost of climate change is from fossil fuel. And now he has made a statement that that there is no link to, you know, to fossil fuel being the cause of climate change, whereas the IPCC has a lot of materials or evidences that shows that fossil fuel is causing climate change. In addition to all other activities, and which are also majorly done by the developed countries. Africa, for instance, is only contributing like is about 3%. So what's your take on how the conversation is going about you know, the cause of climate change? Well, if you cannot establish the cause, how do we address the solution?
Right, thank you. I think first it has to be collaborative efforts. As in, yeah, we know that most of the MNCs actually cause the greenhouse gases, and many of your factories are based in developing countries. Just think of the Niger Delta, and the benefits of these extractive industries actually going back to the countries, the Western countries. The question is, how much are they willing to pay in terms of loss and damage? I think some organizations and some companies do actually engage in climate washing. They do actually see most climate action as a tick box exercise. So it has to be something that it has to be collaborative. It has to be everybody has to contribute, but not equally. That's the thing. So the international community has to play a role. The rich Western states have to play a role, and that does not excuse African states, developing countries. So sometimes we excuse the inefficiency of the government in regulating the oil sector, and basically just say all the problems are from the Western countries. Yes, they are from Western, but the Nigerian government, African governments, the African Union have a role to play. Then in terms of the conversation between Mary Robertson and the head of COP28, you can actually see from that conversation that sometimes some companies, okay, I just give this example. Shell is known for environmental degradation in Nigeria, right? And Shell is one of the companies that are saying that they're moving to a low carbon economy. And in the future, Shell has basically moved away most of its assets from Nigeria. It's basically reconceptualizing itself as an energy green company. The question is, are these companies moving to renewables because there's a massive market in the future that they've seen the markets of the future. They want to basically invest and basically be ready for that. Because we are going to say companies should do mitigation adaptation. It's very, very expensive. It's only the rich companies that have resources. So some of these companies as well, they're probably seeing this move to low carbon economy, energy transition as one way to make more profit. So until companies see it as not just a moral duty, as a legal duty, because they are the ones that contribute most to greenhouse gases, to ensure that they stop contributing and they ensure that they and mitigate those negative impacts. The question is, we don't know if climate change as we know now is the beginning of the end or this is the end of the beginning. We don't know. So we are complaining about climate change now. How will 20 years from now be? Even 10 years from now. So it's scary, but we have to come together. But on the other hand, if you look at the crisis in the world today, sometimes countries prioritize their energy. Energy security becomes a political issue. Now it becomes national security. The UK is trying to explore more oil. America is trying to explore more. Everybody is scared and they want to protect the national security, they want to preserve the energy resources. So there's a lot of issues at place, but I think there's a little glimmer of hope that things will get better, but nobody knows. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Hosa. We want to especially thank you for sharing your ideas and sharing your experiences and expertise with us. We will let you go now. While we move to the next, I don't think that there is any question in the chat box for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, sir. We are grateful that you are able to share with us. Thank you.
And most of my publications, most of my work are available online. We just search for me, you see many of my papers. So if anybody wants to send me an email afterwards, my email address is fully available online. So you can send me email or anything. So I have an open door policy. All right. Thank you.
Okay,
have a successful
yeah, you can also drop your email on the chat box so that anybody can, people can easily access it.
Okay, I'm just doing that now. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, sir. We are grateful.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for still staying with us. Oh, so many people have left already. I know that there are a lot of activities going on out there. Please, Aminat, are you still there? I can't seem to find where to share my screen so that I can take the Aminat?
Yeah, Jimmy, she wants to share her screen.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Jimmy, please help. Yeah.
So please, can you share it from your own side? I can just share the profile so that I can. Oh, okay. I think I've seen where to share the screen. Please just go ahead to help me share the screen. I think I'm having issues. Allow me now, please, can you share?
You already sharing it already. Okay. Who's sharing it? Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I'm so sorry for the delay in bringing in the second speaker. So the second speaker is going to be speaking about connecting the dots. How is climate change increasing GBV issues in Nigeria or anywhere else in the world? So she's Mrs. Morenike Omaboje. She's currently board member and director of programs with Women's Consortium of Nigeria, WOCON, WUCON. WUCON is a non-governmental, non-profit, non-partisan, and non-religious organization committed to the enforcement of women and children's rights and the attainment of equality, development, and peace. WUCON holds a special consultative status with the United Nations. She is a gender advocate, manages the day-to-day operations of WUCON, leading efforts to forge partnerships with local non-governmental organizations and international partners for the attainment of equal status of women in all aspects of social, economic, and political development within the communities and the nation at large. In managing programs in Nigeria, Mrs. Morenike leverages her years of experience to ensure the objectives of large donor-sponsored projects involving grassroots outreaches, victim support, and protection, behavioral change, community mobilization, engagement, awareness raising, advocacy, dialogues, and so on. She has contributed to the national and regional non-governmental organization shadow reports, draft general recommendations of the Convention on the elimination of discrimination against women and girls, on trafficking in women and girls in the context of exploitation of children in Nigeria, and responded to a call for submission of statements from the Office of the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights during the visit of the Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons in Nigeria. She is, originally a human resource management practitioner. Morenike has a comprehensive understanding of organizational change, as her previous experience spans across two American oil companies, where she had broad-ranging private sector experience gained within an ever-changing environment, including problem-solving and board-level presentation skills. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I have the privilege to welcome Ms. Morenike Omaiboje to speak on connect the dots on how climate change can increase gender-based violence in Nigeria. Over to you, Ms. Morenike. And
thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name.
It's understandable. It's
Yes.
understandable. That's the diversity in Nigeria. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, we didn't need that introduction, that very long bio. Didn't need to have been read anymore. We're looking at time now. Yes, how does climate change increase the risk of gender-based violence? We all know that. In fact, it's all the presentations today, I'm almost sure will center around that. In terms of, how the women are disproportionately, affected. So like we know, gender-based violence, affects women disproportionately, and, it can be sexual, it can be physical, it can be verbal, psychological, even socioeconomically, gender-based violence affects, women and girls. And it's interesting to note that when we talk about climate change, it's an indirect. Can we mute our phones, please?
Please mute yourself. Please see if you can mute from your end. And please, hello everyone. Please, can you go to participant information so that you can change your name from the name that is appearing? I can see that my name is appearing on several. That's because I shared my Zoom link with you, and you're joining from that Zoom link, so it's changing the name to my own name. So please go to this participant section and you can just change your name to your real name there. Thank you very much. Please, Ma, you can go on.
So like I was saying, gender-based violence, affects women, extensively and in many forms. And it's interesting to know that when it also comes to climate change, it's not a direct impact, but it's, taking so many shapes because of the issues that are the multifaceted issues that affect it. So the relationship between gender and climate change is not gender. It means that it is not gender neutral, meaning that, it is not something that affects, everybody the same way. It affects women more. So it's not gender neutral. Women and girls experience the greatest impacts of, climate change, and this strengthens existing gender equalities that we are grappling with in the whole world. It poses unique threats, for livelihoods, for health, and the safety of women and girls. When we look at the heat waves, the droughts, the rising levels, the extreme storms, all this, disproportionately affect the woman. Like the climate-induced disasters can also intensify gender inequalities. It can enhance it, it can amplify it, because it makes girls and women more vulnerable to gender-based violence. Even when, these things happen, disasters and tragedies happen, everybody goes back to life, living normal lives. but the woman and the girl child are suffering the effect of these things. So what has changed? I'm talking to climate experts today. I'm not even one, but I can confidently say that even the layman on the street knows that we are experiencing hotter temperatures directly affecting people's behaviors. You know, people who are hot are also perceived to become more aggressive. This enhances or triggers, hostile confrontations, because this would, trigger hostile conversations where, in other words, the heat wave or the heat stress can cause people to act more aggressively. Who suffers the impact of that at home? The woman. Who suffers the impact of that at home? The girl child. You are not cooking. You are not doing this. You didn't go to the farm. Why did you come back at 5 p.m. when you are supposed to be there till 6:30? And a lot of those things happen and affect the woman. Climate change increases the drivers for violence, particularly in conflict, in displacement, with food insecurity, and like I said before, socioeconomic impact. There are drivers to violence. Violence doesn't occur if you have a peaceful home where mom is working or is even not asked to work and dad is providing, children are doing well, there will be no need for violence. But there are some drivers, that, forge violence, that make violence to thrive, like poor behavioral control, emotional disorder on the part of the men who perpetuate these things. And then things like illiteracy affects the women, because if they are not literate, they are not enlightened, they don't know what their rights are, there is lack in the family, which is arising from poverty. The lack is, centered around poverty, is centered around unemployment. And then there are cultural norms and traditions. There are gender stereotypes, the wrong perception and beliefs about what women should do or should not do. Women are the ones that should go to the farm. What is a man going to do there? Even men go to the farm, but women should stay back and gather all the stuff that needs to be gathered and come back home at 6. Even in Lagos, Nigeria, now that is not a rural environment, look at the time. At 6:30, just look at the time today. By 6:30, everywhere is dark. So there are changing weathers, and this affects the women. As I am speaking to you now in December 4th, when we're supposed to be having Harmattan, it is raining heavily in my area. Rain just started about 10 minutes ago in my area. So everything is upside down. So, this wrong perception about what women should do, how they should be the one to provide food and this and that, also affects, violence. They are key drivers of violence, rather. For example, patriarchy. Patriarchy is a society where all the power goes to men with the exclusion of women. Women don't have a say. They cannot talk. They cannot do anything. So patriarchy is what we practice. Our society is a patriarchal society. And these things, just like it affects women in other areas, climate change is not left out. For example, climate change causes disruption of protective systems. So the systems that have been put in place, because rain will come when it's not supposed to come, because sunshine will come, or heat waves will come, or come in abundance, come with extreme intensity. These things affect the protective systems that either the local authorities or the government have put in place, as they affect children, as they affect women and girls. Climate change contributes to increased conflict in indirect ways. Like I had said before, it makes the most vulnerable women even more vulnerable, and it amplifies existing gender inequalities. It poses unique threats to the health of the woman. A grassroots woman is returning from the farm at 6:30 p.m., like I said, with no electricity, no street light. You can imagine the risk that she's exposed to. Of course, she's exposed to rape, she's exposed to abduction, she's exposed to all forms of violence. Why gender matters in climate change? Why do we have, gender matters happening? It is a social, it's a political and economic and cultural factors that drive this vulnerability when we talk about climate change. Women have limited access and control to agricultural resources such as land and capital. And these are issues that, help to make the practices and the norms to make it discriminate on gender grounds. It makes for more discrimination on gender grounds. So we need to look at, all these things and, agree with the fact that there is really a link between gender-based violence and, climate change. How about the increased burden of providing domestic needs like water, like food, all those things? The woman in the home is expected to look at them, and her health and her safety is jeopardized. How about displacement due to drought, displacement due to flooding? It may increase exposure to sexual abuse. It may increase exposure to child marriage. A girl can be abducted in the farm, coming back home at 6. And when that is done, she's forced into early marriage, and then her education stops abruptly. Victims of conflicts are also vulnerable. They lack basic amenities required for survival. As a result, whatever is available is up for competition because it's a scarce resource. For example, this may cause exploitation. Look at what happens in the IDP camps, where there are reliefs for them to share, and then the people who are even sharing are exploiting them because the resource is scarce. That is how it is with victims of conflicts. And then in crisis settings, several things also, cause, gender-based violence. Like we have said, poverty, breakdown of services, conflict and war, displacement, stress in the home. All these things cause, make women to become more at risk when it comes to climate change. So with all of this, I will just quickly look at what are the things. Statistics have said a lot. If you want to look at it, research has indicated that women and girls are up to 14 times more likely to be harmed during a disaster. And climate change is a disaster. And it contributes to this increased conflict, and a lot of these factors affect the woman in the home. Nigeria has done a lot, but they can do much more. They've adopted new measures. They've announced plans to reduce emissions. They've adopted new, methane guidelines, and they've done a lot, but a lot more has to be done. So my recommendations will be in the area of it's no longer being a choice. It's no longer a choice for women, to experience climate resilience. It has become an urgent need. So the government should address this issue strictly from the human rights angle. The former speaker said that as well, from the gender dimensional angle and the human rights angle. In other words, government should ensure the protection of women, especially rural women. We need more public enlightenment, more advocacy for gender equality, which the CSOs are doing. The civil society organizations are doing great work in this area. But the government needs to look at these things from both the human rights angle and the gender dimension. And when this is done, it will trickle down to the grassroots so that everyone understands the gender dimensions as it affects climate change, which is the subject of today. If I was talking about human trafficking, which is a focus of my organization, I would also be talking about looking at it from the gender perspective. So for climate change, it's the same thing. What are we saying? Ensure climate action is inclusive and equitable. And then we should encourage grassroots women leadership. CSOs, government, and all parties involved should ensure that grassroots women are at the decision table. This same thing goes for women when we are talking about more political participation in politics. You know, grassroots women leadership should be encouraged. Women should be at the decision table. They are the only ones who can talk about things that affect them. They should be equipped and educated and trained to know how to tap into the resources and the opportunities that are available to them. They are to be taught to take charge of climate initiatives in their communities. 21st century 21st century organization is doing a lot of work, and so also are all the organizations represented here, including the organization coordinating this. So the gathering and the collection of data is also a key factor, because it should be targeted at the unique needs of women as far as climate change is concerned. Lastly, I know somebody will come and talk about the National Action Plan. For example, you know, the National Action Plan is making efforts in ensuring that Nigeria mainstreams gender in all our climate change strategies, so that women, men, and youths can have access to participate and contribute to benefit from climate change initiatives from the government. This should also be enhanced. I would like to stop here so that others can talk. Thank you very much. I'll be available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Morenike. You have really raised very pertinent issues, but we are going to keep you on a hold, and I hope you are still available, because we are going to go back to some of the issues you've raised. So I'm going to bring in Damaris from Women Environment Program, so that she can share information about what have been done so far. What are those national efforts that have been put in place to address gender issues in climate change, and also to tell us if these issues the issues of gender-based violence has been included in these actions. Please, Damaris, I know you are going to be on the road, and we might get disconnected along the way, but please, can you come in quickly and give us an overview of what is going on right now, what have been done already to address gender issues in climate change? Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, Glory. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for bringing up this conversation. So my name is Damaris Uja. I work with Women Environmental Program as Monitoring and Evaluation Manager. And I also support the implementation of some of these climate change projects that we do at WEB. So talking about climate change and gender, I appreciate what the first two speakers have said. And for us, gender is one of the core areas that we work at WEB. So it's when we talk about gender, sometimes people mistake it for issues of women alone, but thank God for some of these conversations that have been coming up. It's not just about women alone. We look at other groups that are also affected, even men. We look at persons with disability. We look at children as well. They are all under the vulnerable population, and these issues of gender-based violence also affect them. So linking gender with climate change and some of the efforts that have been in place to address these issues. As we all know, Nigeria is one of the signatories to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which negotiation has been going on in Dubai at COP28. And one of the efforts that we did in collaboration with Ministry of Environment was the formulation of the Gender Action Plan on National Action Plan on Gender and Climate Change, which were supported through conducting of stakeholders engagement up to the financing of the process that was adopted and enacted, signed into law by the then President Buhari, the immediate past president of Nigeria, in 2021. And the National Action Plan on Gender and Climate Change has been online. It's a tool that we should all have access to, because it talks about other legal or national global frameworks that also addresses these issues. It has a section that talks about legal frameworks and mandates and policy that are related to environment and gender, which UNFCCC is one of it. It also talks about the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against women, CEDAW, is also part of it. It talked about Maputo Protocol, the National Gender Policy, and even the ministries that are saddled with the responsibility of addressing issues of environment and gender as well, which Federal Minister of Environment, the Minister of Women Affairs, the National Center for Women Development, all and others stakeholders are involved. So the Gender Action Plan has a lot of components, also has a breakdown of actions that different stakeholders can take to address issues of climate change and gender. We have sessions that are targeted at women's access to land ownership. We talked about issues of food insecurity, which we are to work with Ministry of Agri to see how we can implement some climate smart agriculture practices that will address issues of food insecurity, especially for areas that are affected by climate change, like we're talking about the northern region, where we can train farmers to have access to seeds that are resistant to climate change, that can even grow with little amount of rainfall and all that. Then different other stakeholders, even the health component as well, where we can work and collaborate with Ministry of Health to see how we can also bring in issues of women that don't even have access to health facilities when this climate change impact affect them. They are displaced, they don't have access to their homes, and also when there are issues of rapes, how do you collaborate with different ministries to address these issues? All those things are listed in the National Action Plan and how we can work with these stakeholders. So after this action plan was signed and officially launched, we took a step forward of bringing stakeholders at the North Central region, because we had just a little fund to do the activity. We could not bring in all the states in Nigeria, but we started with the North Central region, where we brought up different stakeholders from the ministries that are saddled with the responsibility of implementing this action plan, then civil society organizations, different groups, even persons with disability representatives, how they were trained, and we digested the content of this national action plan to them, and they were given a task to other workshop to develop their own little actions at the state level that are not so expensive to implement, but they can at their local level take up this responsibility, even in terms of awareness creation about some of these actions and all that, so that going back to their states, they will also implement this action. And then we, through some of our partners, will be able to support them with small grants to do some activities at the state level. We've been looking for opportunities to get grants to continue some of this engagement at other regions where this sensitization has not taken place. But Ministry of Environment on its own has also done some activities in terms of sensitizing people about the National Action Plan. And for programming, like most of our climate change mitigation adaptation projects, we bring in the component of targeting women directly. Like I said before, issues of gender are not just for women, but we tend to focus on women more, or tend to be deliberate about women because of the impact that is much on them. And even when it affects them, it affects their children and all that. So we do programs that are deliberate about reaching out to women. And recently we brought in the components of looking out specifically for persons with disability, again, because most times we said that we're working to ensure that no one is left behind, but in taking action, we don't consider these people at the designing stage of our program. So sometimes we remember them at the implementation stage and they have little representation. So we're making it a deliberate habit now to bring in activities that target specifically these people and to see how they are taking up these actions themselves, to see how they will address this issue and also build their own resilience to adapt to this climate change impact. Because like the other speaker said, whether we lack the knowledge or the language to explain it in local terms for them to understand, there are things that we do that we see that they will also understand. Look at the issue of heat. By 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. sometimes you see the kind of sun that is coming out and how you're feeling it on your body. You know that even if you don't believe about the language, about the English that people are speaking, you should know that there is a change that is happening. So what is that change? The climate conditions are changing. So these are practical things that we use sometimes to sensitize these people, to also make them understand that these things that are happening around you as a result of this and this and this. And these are some of the actions you could take to also help address these issues. So basically, on our part, that is what has been done, and in collaboration with some of our partners. And going forward, we hope to see how this campaign, this sensitization efforts can go down to every state, and even at the local level, people should also understand that this is what climate change is, and we have to all take responsibility of implementing actions that will help mitigate this impact. So I will pause here and see if you have any question or any concern that you want me to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Damaris. It's very insightful to know all the work that the organization have done. I know Web for a long time, and I know that you people have really done a great work in promoting gender issues in climate change, not just promoting it legally or making it a frontline issue, but also taking actions in communities that women are not left behind in discussions about climate change, in activities about climate change. So thank you very much for sharing these great insights. But I want to ask a question concerning the National Climate, Gender Climate Action or Gender Action Plan that have been developed. I know it is a national document. But how far do you think this document can go in as a tool in promoting women's participation, women addressing the issues that have been raised? We've seen yes, that climate change may not have a direct effect on GBV, but it could trigger the drivers of GBV. So aside from what your organization is doing, because I know that your organization is an organization, but this, we are talking about a national plan. Do you think that the government, can really, this document can really be used to address these issues that have been raised? So apart from the actions that you are doing at your organizational level, I don't know if you understand what I am trying to say.
Yes, I understand what you said, and like I said before, this is a national document that the development of the document was not just done by Women Environmental Program and Ministry of Environment alone. It involved all the stakeholders, like I mentioned, the Ministry of Agri, the Ministry of Water Resources, the Ministry of Health, and civil society organizations, which are also very key in implementing climate change action. And then if it has different objectives targeting different stakeholders, and even research institutions who are also knowledge-based. So it's not something that is just about Ministry of Environment or Department of Climate Change, now the National Climate Change Council alone. It's a national document, and Nigeria used to boast about this document anytime they're having conversations on gender and climate change and all that. So if you look at the document critically, you will see that there are specific targets and activities or actions that each of these stakeholders are supposed to take to address these issues. So for me, I feel that if all of these people give priority as stated in the document in different areas in terms of food security and health, because if you bring issue of food security and health, you will see that you cannot do that alone. You have to involve Ministry of Agri, Ministry of Health. If you are bringing issue of land, which is also a very critical tool to cultivate food and also address issues of food insecurity, you cannot leave Ministry of Agri alone. There is also issue of energy and transport. I didn't want to bring that one in, but you see that issue of transport and energy, you cannot do without bringing Ministry of Transport or Energy Commission in, because when disaster happen, for instance, let's look at the issue of flood in Nigeria. When flood happens, you see how women suffer with children, people with disability are most times abandoned because people run and live there, and most of them cannot move by themselves. So if we are planning actions that, for instance, we're looking at preemptive measures to address issues of climate change, we cannot make these plans without considering Ministry of Transport, because even when warnings are out, people are very stubborn, they don't listen. So when these disasters happen, how do you move? How do you evacuate people? And even the issue of shelter, you have to start looking at how you can even work with a National Emergency Management Agency and all that. So it's something that is a stakeholder approach that we need to use. It's multi-sectoral. It's not something that is independent of one organization or one ministry or one agency that should implement this action plan. It's something that I'm just mentioning a few of some of these things that are in the National Action Plan. It's a document that is like over like 60 pages or so, but it's quite interesting. If you just Google it, you will see it. You can, I think a PDF copy is online that you can download and look at these things that I stated there. But like I said before, we have good tools like this, but because of lack of knowledge, people don't tend to use it. But if we have access to some of this information and even build proposals around it, even as civil society organization, just make use of a component of that document as a reference to, you will see how you can also contribute to the implementation of this document. So I think that is something that it should not be left for one agency or one ministry alone. It's something that should involve everybody, because everybody has a role to play. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your response. I think we have a hand up, Sikiru Ibrahim. Please go on with your question. Yes.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be part of this conversation. Actually, I reside in Ebonyi State. My first experience with GBV was when the UNICEF, EU, they partner with religious bodies in Nigeria to tackle gender-based violence. We call it NVAG, Violence Against Women and Girls. And I happen to be the manager for the program in Ebonyi State. And after the program, it was a very successful one, just about 3 or 4 months campaign. So after which we now began to have several cases. People they all come to report to us, and then we don't let them down. Now after that, I've been able to be part of several meetings, and I always address one issue. And I want to raise it because of what I heard from our last speaker, Mrs. Uja, because sustain this program is the most important thing. After the funding agencies, after they leave the program, we that we are the managers, we are left on our own. Then people come to us with cases. Many times we had several cases that we cannot pursue. We will report to the police, they will ask for money before you can mobilize, they can put fuel in their cars. If you get to the police station, they will tell us, okay, before they can arrive, you have to pay some money. So we are only volunteers that we just did the program, and they want to sustain that legacy. Not that we are being paid after the program again. But the cases kept coming, but there was no follow-up. So anytime I find myself in places like this where people talk about it should not be just having meetings up. Let's look at the field workers. I have seen that many a time we go with our money to do many things. We know how things are hard in Nigeria now. So the cases are there, but nothing for us to pursue it. Yes, we joined CPN, and with CPN, many a times it increased our referral pathways. But in many occasions too, you see that some things are lacking out of lack of much commitment, financial commitment particularly. The police ask you money before they can leave the office, before they can ask you money, and you cannot follow up some cases to a level where you can say that yes, we have achieved our aim by reporting these cases, because many times financial stuff. So how can that area, when I now heard about the issue of grants from the last speaker, that's yes, how can we in Ebonyi State particularly supported with grants that can sustain this project, and that can sustain this activity? Because when the funding agencies left, then we are on our own. But we cannot keep our arms crossed. We are struggling, but if you are not getting much, there is you can do it your personal money that we are with increasing the price these days. That is just my concern. Thank you.
Okay, Damaris, are you there to answer the question? Are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Yes, I'm here. If you had listened to me very well, I said that even when this National Action Plan was adopted by the president, we took a step to bring people together to sensitize them for the North Central region, and we'll be able to support some of them to support their implementation efforts. Talking of Ebonyi State, we even have a partner in Ebonyi State, apart from this grant that we got to support the North Central region. We got a grant for Urgent Action Fund that was to address the issue of land grabbing. And we also worked with one of our partners in Ebonyi State. One of the ways where WEP work is to work through partners at the state level, the subnational level, because we know that we cannot be everywhere. And one of the things that we can also do to support local or community-based organization is through sub-granting. We also look for money from donors, and it depends on how you structure your proposal and the level of funding that it's available. We cannot do everything, or we cannot reach out to everybody, but what I can say is we've been trying our best to support actions at the state and local level, because that is how our work is. Like, I'm even talking presently, I'm in Katsina State. I came for a visit because we have a project here, and we work through some of our partners. So it's not something that we just have funding available every time to support. It's just our own little effort through our own donors to support actions at the state. But whatever funding is available, we also do a call for application via our own communication platform to see how we can support organizations. And most of these organizations are also in our database that we work with. So I will only encourage you, if you are an NGO, you have your own NGO, you also look out for some of these partnership and collaboration. And if there are opportunities, definitely you will get access to those opportunities. And again, it's also about making use of the little resources available at your own disposal as where to implement some of this action. Some of this action does not necessarily need you to put in so much money to implement. So that's just my response regarding that. The issue of funding is something that is very, very difficult for everybody, but we'll keep pushing. If there are opportunities, we'll definitely share.
Okay, so thank you very much, and thank you, Sikiru, for that question. I understand your position. I also was a part of implementing the Spotlight Initiative, which aims to end violence against women and girls in Ebonyi State and in Cross River State. Yeah, so I quite understand the issue of, after funds, what happens. Yeah, some of those projects are suspended, and are not carried on because every funding has their limitations. They have their targets, and once they meet that target or the program time ends, it is now left for the communities to take action. That is why also when during the planning and during the implementation, the communities are carried along so that they can take ownership of the projects, and also like start their own internal resource mobilization to be able to implement those projects. But again, that is also why we are having this conversation. Yes, climate change may not be directly impacting GBV, but it has an indirect link with GBV. So that means that there is what climate change can do that will result in having or increasing the risk of GBV that is already there, so, and all those drivers, okay, women and girls access to education. If people who are educated are easily able to deal with GBV issues. If you are educated, you know what to do, to respond to issues around you. We have talked about access to resources, which our lead speaker talked about, access to resources that limits women, to have access to those resources that will help them to adapt. Like we are talking about food security being impacted by climate change, and women are the major smallholder farmers are women. And if flooding happens and destroys their farms, do the women have access to finance to cope or to recover from those shocks and all those impacts? When there is a drought and there's no water, and then their farming activities depend on rainfall, and then there's no more rainfall because of climate change, what happens to those smallholder farmers? How do they access water to continue to farm and to produce food to feed their families? So these are the things we are saying, and then that is why we are having this conversation, so that the GBV response actions can be integrated into climate change, especially into climate finance. Okay, so if not just them, like Madam Damaris have talked about, the projects they are doing to help climate smart agriculture, plant drought resistant crop and all that. But then what about the people who have been displaced because of these things? And like she mentioned, the people with a disability, women, vulnerable women that cannot, continue or have access to all these things. How do we respond to them based on, because they are being, they are going to be faced with, with gender-based issues resulting from these particular, incidences. Okay, so what we are saying is that the race, GBV issues should, come to light in terms of discussions about financing climate action. So if we can have a way of integrating this response, like you are talking about shelters for vulnerable people who are displaced at home because of drought. And let me even point out quickly before I go on, the issue of header farmers conflicts that we all know in Nigeria, for instance. I know we have given it a political coloration, we have given it ethnic coloration and the other rest. But then what is really the main driver? The main driver is resources, scarcity of resources. So if the headers who are up north before, can have enough vegetations to feed their animals, do you think they will move down south to start dragging resources with the farmers, and then conflict will result? So these issues also have their environmental environmental issues are drivers of some of the conflict that we all we all know. And when these conflicts happen, women and girls, children, they are the most vulnerable, they are the most impacted. Okay, they are the ones that you see. Go to the IDP camps right now. People who are living there because they have been displaced by farmer header issues. Many of them are women and girls and children. And in terms of responding to these issues, we do not have so much, linking what they are facing in the camps with climate change. So when we are talking about climate financing, can we also bring the issues that these people are facing because they've been displaced because of environmental issues? They've been displaced and they are now in a place where they are also vulnerable to a lot of things. They are vulnerable to rape, they are vulnerable to sexual abuses and all that. And also, like, many of them, when they are displaced, girls can no longer go to school. Men will always find their way. They will, migrate to other places where they will have safety. But women will consider their children. They will consider, moving. What will be the impact on moving? Do you understand? So that is why we are having this conversation, that we should bring this response. These responses should also come into climate change actions, so that we can be able to also, if there are monies that are going to be, allocated to addressing climate change issues, if there are programs, grants that are going to be allocated for addressing climate change, it should also be addressing or helping to, to address or respond to gender-based violences that are happening in, or that are being triggered by climate change. I hope that helps too. Hello, Siriki, are you there?
I'm very much with you. Yeah, I'm very much with you. I really understood what I've said. I'm a researcher too in a university, and I've worked on climate change and farmer conflicts. So I really got what you said quite right. I really appreciate it. So we see how we keep pushing, and let's see how we can do something, because that is a major setback in this struggle. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Damaris, for your insightful contribution to this discussion. So we are going to be moving on to the next program, to next in the agenda. Okay, please.
Sorry, thank you, Glory. I have to leave now, so all the best in the rest of the conversation.
Oh, yes. Please go ahead. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're welcome. Please, Amina, are you there? Please, can you bring us up to date to where we are right now? Okay, so our next discussion is going to be centered on how do we move forward? What are the things? What actions can we take? We have listened to our speakers. We've connected the dots on the impact of climate change and GBV, and we've also seen the documents that have been developed to address gender-based issues. And quite okay, we have people who are working on GBV issues, and then we have people who are working on climate change in this forum. So the question is, how do we move forward? What will be the next? What will be the next action to be taken? How can we use the resources that we have available, the tools that we have available? We have seen the programs. Our first speaker talked about litigation. We have seen. He has talked about policies that we can leverage on the climate action policies. We've also seen from Madam Damaris, we have seen the gender climate action. How do we use that to drive the end violence campaign? How do we begin to integrate them so that we can? So that it can be a win-win. We can actually use one stone to kill two birds. Today we are doing. This is the season of 16 days of activism, where the world is asking what are the countries doing to address GBV, and at the same time, climate change issues is on the spotlight. There is the COP going on. There are actions that are being called. So why can't we, leverage these two platforms and use them to address, since we can now link climate change to GBV, why can't we use these platforms to leverage each other to start addressing these issues and using one stone to kill one bird? So our speaker that is supposed to take this session is in COP. I doubt she's available right now to discuss to make her submission, but I'm going to be opening it up to everyone so that we can all discuss and see how we can, what can we do? What will be the next action for us, and how do we move forward, in addressing GBV and climate change issues? So the floor is open. You can unmute, raise up your hand, and unmute and ask and make your contribution. Okay. Yes, Sikiru, we have you on again.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, I'm a researcher at Funa in Ebonyi State, and then I've been working on climate. Yes. When we talk about how we can mitigate, or how we can support women, how we can bring use climate stuff to empower women thereabouts, the major effect of climate change on women is the access to finance, because they are vulnerable. They don't have much access to some inputs. So that is what they always face in many occasions. So you are now looking at how we can now support them to kind of alleviate these vulnerabilities, and then try to not be causing GBV at home. It's better to say we can finance them. So, and the way we can do that is, let's see how we can form them into groups. We encourage a kind of organization among women farmers, particularly. Because if we say climate change, people have different categories. But the women farmers, so they can help themselves. They have to form themselves into groups. And then the next thing should now be how we can make them how we can expose them to opportunities of financing. People don't hear their voice. They don't always have access like me. So, but if they are in a group, their voice can be easily heard by finance institutions or ways through which they can be helped financially. Second, the third would be that Yes, we have what they call climate information services in Ebonyi State and some other areas. How they can now find some information on climate so that it can help their productivity and help their livelihoods. So you will see how they can be allowed, how they can increase their access to these opportunities that men are already enjoying. But the only way is that they should come together first so that their voices can be heard. And that will now be an opportunity for them to do some better things. That is the major thing that I would say in that particular regard. Let them form the same to groups, women farmers. Yes, if you have some other women in their communities where we can identify effects of climate change on their life that is now leading to GBV, then we can work on that. But the one I know, because I'm a lecturer, I teach agriculture extension in the university, I'm used to that line. I mean women farmers, but I don't know of other women category. I mean, not just about them, but that is just my own submission. This is the way we can, use this climate stuff to encourage them and financially, so that people will not be rampant in society. Thank you. I don't know if I was hard enough. I can't hear anything again. I don't know if I was hard.
Hello.
I don't.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I was talking. I didn't even know that. Also, I muted myself initially. So I said so your observation or your recommended is quite insightful. You have said access to finance is a major problem, and I agree with you. Women accessing finance, if there's a way to make women have access to finance to deal with issues around them and not just waiting for grants from development organizations or governments, if women can have access to finance, that would be very helpful. And you have suggested that women should form groups, maybe who should be able to help them to form these groups, maybe organizations within their communities. We as CSOs, we can, in our communities, we can help farmers or women, form organizations, help them apply for grants, help them develop programs, develop proposals, so that it can be submitted, to grant-making organization, and they can have access to these funds. Yeah, I think so. That's very, very appreciate. That suggestion is appreciated. Women can also form cooperatives. With cooperatives, you can be able to, access funds and use it to adapt, to the impacts of climate change. Thank you very much. Please, do we have any other contribution on the way forward? How do we use the resources that are provided through the climate action and climate change initiatives to help women who are survivors of GBV to begin to adapt? Now we have seen that most of the survivors of GBV or GBV issues are also triggered by climate change.
Okay, if you can hear me, I'll also like to talk about, I'll also like to stress on empowerment, where you raise their awareness and strengthen their capacity, and this can lead to, their greater participation, can enhance their decision-making power. It will make them take control of their lives. It will help them to become more assertive, more confident, so that they can do their own things. They can design their own ways of, this is how we want to set the, for example, the what you talked about, opening, looking at how we can come together and contribute money, or we want access to finance, we want access to this thing or this resource or this thing. If they are empowered and their capacities are strengthened, then we are creating leaders out of them. So they can take charge of their lives, set their own agendas, build their own self-confidence, solve their problems, develop, like I said, develop their own design, the things that would help them to become what they will become. And it also gives them the ability to make choices. So they can make choices and they can empower themselves. Institutions like CSOs, like even government agencies, Ministry of Women Affairs can support this kind of process, to develop their skills and make them self-reliant and help them to access more resources. That's what I think. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that contribution. Yes, women need that empowerment. They need to be able to develop the ability to self-help themselves, as in to help themselves rather than just waiting. So, but their capacity need to be built. They need to be educated. They need to be informed. They need to be provided with skills. I know that the Spotlight Initiative had some components whereby they were able to train women on certain skills so that they are able to contribute both financially, because we talked earlier at climate finance. So if women are empowered, they are trained on skills that can earn them money, on skills that they can, or programs that can build their capacity to respond on their own, to be able to respond, like even psychologically, self-esteem, all those, to set their own goals and all that. So that will go a long way in helping women deal with the issues of gender-based violence, and especially and also as it relates to climate change. So like climate change without adaptation, without having the capacity to adapt, if we don't build capacity of people to adapt, then we are not really ready to solve the problem, because the issue of climate change as it is right now, it will take a long time for it to go away. So, but we can't wait for it to go away. So we have to have ways of adapting and building the capacity of women, empowering them with skills, with opportunities, also ways that we can help them to adapt appropriately. So thank you very much, Ma, for your submission. Is there any other contribution? More contributions, please, as we begin to round up. Hello? Are we still together?
Yes.
I
Okay.
have a contribution. So, can we hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ma.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Still on access to finance, women access to finance. I just want to add a bit of financial skill training. I think we should support women's resilience through initiatives like financial skills training, access to credit, agricultural resources, and diversified income opportunities, so that they can have less dependence on potential perpetrators during climate shocks and slow onset changes. Then women should be well represented in leadership and decision-making processes about climate change and preparedness programs and policies, both at the local, national, and international level. So women's voices and perspectives on needs and solutions must be heard at the table. So I think that is an important aspect of gender-based violence and climate change also. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for your contribution. Is that Amina that contributed, or?
No, this is Jumoke.
Okay, Madam Jumoke, thank you very much for your contribution. Yes, that financial literacy, women need to understand, there are the trends are changing, things are changing, and then the way finances are being handled in the past is no longer the way they are being handled right now. So women need to be, be taught how to handle their finances. So many of them are doing something and then they are not even, they don't even know how to save money. They don't know how to save for the rainy day, like, especially like the farmers and all that. They need financial knowledge so that they'll be able to, save. If there's going to be flooding, what will you be doing within that time that there'll be flooding? How do you cope? How do you save so that by the time these things happen, you are able to also be able to move on with your life before that time? And then you talked about representation in policies. I think this is something that has been an issue everywhere, both in politics, in every sphere. Although we have seen a little bit of progress, but there is still been a lot of gaps in women's representation in terms of decision making, in terms of policy formulation and all that. Sometimes we only get invited to forums where already the document has been developed, and then they call some women to come and be present for the validation and all that. But during the development, nobody called them, and it was just we just presume that these are the issues or concerns of women. So, and then you include it and then tell them to come and endorse it. I think we should begin to move from that ideology and then move into participatory development, so that at the time you are developing a strategy or a policy document, women should bring their own perspective. Let them tell what their own issue is. You can't tell the story of another person. Let them be able to say, okay, these are the areas that we need that empowerment. These are the areas that we need that finance you're talking about. Because you can have a finance and you say, okay, we are going to put it in social place. Or when you do it, it will impact the lives of women. But the women themselves may say, oh no, this is not the way we want it at the moment. These are not the priority issues that we want to address. We have better issues that we want to talk about. But it's until you bring them to the table that you are able to, know their own side of the story and then bring it into perspective. So thank you very much for your contribution. Please, do we have any other person that wants to contribute? And in addition to what has been said, I also think that early warning systems should also be in place, for to be able to tell when, okay, this year there's going to be heat waves. Already we have seen a lot of heat already. This is still December, early part of the December, and then the heat. Normally in Abuja in those days, by this time you have a lot of cold, but now we are seeing heat already. So it means that probably next year is going to be very hot. But are we seeing, are there published early warning telling us, okay, this is how it's going to look like, this is what you can do to adapt? Because women are going to be faced with a lot of the challenges. A man can walk on the street with his just wearing shorts, and nobody will raise an eyebrow. But can a woman just wear pants and walk on the streets because she's feeling hot? So these are the issues. So women need to be empowered so that they can be able to prepare themselves for these kind of issues. People with disability, when flood happen, how do they run? So if you have somebody with a person with disability in your house and flood happen or disaster happens, you first of all want to run your own race. So we have to begin to prepare those people who are disabled. If there's going to be flooding next year, how many of the people with disability in flood-prone areas are we ready to, are we empowering so that we can move them away, or they can be able to move, like, providing them with mobility, tools for mobility so that they can also be able to run and survive. So these are some of the issues that we need to bring on, on board as we discuss these issues. So if there are no other suggestions, so I would like to bring us to the conclusion of the whole matter. So today we have been able to understand the impact of climate change. We've seen what are the causes of climate change. We have talked about how is it impacting the average Nigerian woman and women and girls. How are they linked to GBV issues in the spirit of 16 days of activism? What are the things that have been done already, and how can we leverage this these tools that are available, these laws, these policies, and these action plans to be able to help those in communities to address climate change impacts, especially as it relates to GBV. So I want to thank everyone that participated. This workshop was programmed to be a physical event, but because of different activities happening at the same time, and also because the finances were not available, the resources was not available to, because of the urgency, or the idea actually came late. So we had to say, okay, let's use this. So let's use virtual means to communicate these issues. I'm proposing that by next year, we'll take this conversation further and bring in people, other stakeholders, to see how we can work together to integrate GBV response into climate action. So that when you are talking about climate action, we should also be talking about responding to GBV issues that are linked with climate change. And also, I would also like a situation where 16 days of activism can also find its way into the COP. I don't think I've seen anybody, any activity going on addressing GBV or bringing 16 days of activism in COP activities. It has, gender is there, yes, addressing gender issues, but we are talking specifically about GBV issues that are being, increased or exacerbated by climate change. And nobody is taking this conversation to COP. And we would like to see next year that GBV issues or gender-based activism will find its way to COP, and we have campaigns on ground on COP advocating for end to gender-based violence in climate actions. So thank you very much. May I have the attention of Center for 21st Century Issues to give us a closing remark while we round up this session.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you, Ma. On behalf of the Executive Director for Center for 21st Century Issues, in person of Ms. Akosa, I want to thank everyone for joining this insightful workshop to mark the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. It has been an insightful and empowering discussion, and we are grateful for the opportunity to engage with experts who are dedicated and passionate about the intersection of gender-based violence and climate change. So as we draw this workshop to a close, I want to encourage everyone to reflect on the key themes and insights that have emerged from our discussions today. And then we've also had insightful presentations from our seasoned speakers, and we've also exchanged valuable ideas and explored tangible steps for driving change. So we need to carry these conversations forward and continue to advocate for a world free from gender-based violence. So I urge everyone to remain actively involved in the fight against gender-based violence, whether through raising awareness, supporting victims, advocating for policy change, or challenging harmful attitudes and behaviors. Each one of us have a crucial role to play in creating a safer and more equitable society. So let us all remember our collective efforts in making a difference, and that change is possible. So finally, I want to express my gratitude to the organizers, speakers, and participants for their unwavering commitment to this cause. And then thank you all for taking out time of your busy schedules, considering the fact that COP28 is ongoing and there are lots of activities ongoing at the same time. So thank you once again for your contribution to today's meeting. Let's continue to stand united against gender-based violence and work together towards a world where everyone can thrive in safety and dignity. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you so much, 21st Century, for also hosting this through your platform. Thank you, everyone. I hope everybody signed or filled the attendance register, because we will be taking this further next year by God's grace, and we'll be reaching out to everyone if you fill the form, so that we can be able to communicate with you on our next action, because we do not want to just let this not just be okay, another conversation and you just finish and everybody goes home. No, we are going to be reaching out to you to participate in developing actions that we can take, to move the subject matter forward, and to see our desires or recommendations, all the things that we have recommended, to see them come to reality. So we will need your email addresses filled in the attendance register, so that we can be able to reach out to you further. So thank you very much to all our experts again. Thank you for volunteering your time, your resources, your expertise, to bring this conversation forward, and to also encourage participation of people. So we thank everybody that have also participated, and we look forward to more engagement and taking this campaign forward. So
sorry, Ma, sorry to
yes.
interrupt. We need to take a group picture, please, and I would urge everyone to put on their camera, so that we can have a group picture before we end the meeting.
Okay, so please, everybody, put on your camera. I'm already on my camera. So I think we should end the screen. Please, can you remove the screen? Yeah, yes. So I'm going to use a slogan. So this slogan is going to be connecting climate change and GBV. So we are going to say climate change, and you say end violence. So because we have that slogan in ending violence, where you say something and then you say end violence with this. So now it's going to be climate action, end violence. I hope we get it right. Climate action,
end violence.
Unmute so that we can all hear. Climate action,
end violence.
End violence.
Has the pictures been taken? I mean, have you taken the pictures?
Oh, I forgot. You're supposed to take a picture. I don't even know.
Okay. End violence.
Climate action, end violence.
Violence. End violence.
Taking.
Okay. I think the pictures have been taken. Thank you very much, everyone. So we are ending this session, and we look forward to having you again when we call. God bless us all. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Bye.